here at the Guilford Free Library. It's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight and to introduce our distinguished panel. I might have called this program Parallel Lives, and I think you will be able to tell why. Carl Balistraci grew up here in Guilford, and after college and serving in the Air Force, he returned in 1964 to stay. He was a teacher and then principal at Adams Middle School. Retirement gave him the opportunity to fully develop his interests in carving duck decoys, researching history. He's published Flesh and Stone, Stony Creek and the Age of Granite, and membership in the Ancient Mariners Fife and Drum Corps. He now serves as our first selectman. Stanley Barnes came to Guilford as a young boy, and he too returned after serving in the Air Force during World War II. Stan taught at two of the elementary schools, Calvin Lee and Melissa Jones, before becoming principal of Calvin Lee. Stan also carves in soapstone and has volunteered his time to the Library Board, to Faulkner's Light Brigade, to the Guilford Community Fund. He's also served several terms as the town's selectman. Edith Nettleton came to Guilford as a young girl. After graduating from the local school, she went to Springfield, Massachusetts to be educated in librarianship. She returned as the town's first paid librarian in 1933 and was the best investment in Guilford's library history. She opened the new building in 1934. For 11 years, Edith bought and cataloged the books, ran the reference and circulation desks, and cared for the building. In 1945, part-time assistants were hired. The first phone was put in 1952. She oversaw the expansion in 1977 and retired in 1978. She was honored in 2003 for 70 years of volunteering. We treasure her continuing service today. Penny Colby began her library career here in 1979. After teaching drama in Guilford schools, she found her niche here in the reference department and ultimately in the historical room. Her retirement a year ago has given her time to indulge in her hobbies of gardening, sewing, and knitting, as well as community service. She's on the board of the Guilford Preservation Alliance. Most importantly, she's returned to the library's historical room as a volunteer and has graciously agreed to moderate tonight's discussion. So,
thank you all for coming tonight. We're going to start with Edith, and Edith's going to tell us something about what the library was like when she first arrived here. And then we're going to hear from Carl and Stan, and we're hoping that in the last 15 minutes we will have questions from the audience, so be thinking. Edith, can you tell us about the library?
When I was thinking about the library history, it surprised me to realize that we are celebrating this month the 73rd anniversary of the building in which we started. On 23rd of January 1934 was held an open house to introduce the townspeople to their new Guilford Free Library. Can you hear me? Am I talking right?
Maybe hold that time.
Many interesting records trace the history of libraries in Guilford. In the 1700s, we were part of a town library, 4 town libraries, Saybrook, Killingworth, and Lyme. In the 1800s, several small library ventures came and went. These had been all subscription libraries, and for which a fee was paid to participate. In 1870, Mr. Simeon Chittenden offered funds for a library to the town, but he had a stipulation that it should be built on the green. This did not meet with town approval. In 1890, the Young Women's Christian Temperance Union had a branch in town, and with a group of young ladies from the First Church, they joined together, opening a free reading room. upstairs over Mr. Hale's store, which is now 25 Whitfield Street. This came to be called the Guilford Library Association and was run by 25 ladies. The next year, a gift from Mr. Dickey, who lived in where the Catholic Church is now, gave a gift of a lot on Whitfield Street opposite the Eagle Hose Company, and also $1,000. And this windfall decided the ladies that they should build a library on the lot, and then to earn funds to operate the building for many years, they sponsored and put on entertainments and sales, ice cream socials, and occasionally solicited funds from the town. In 1900, a new member of the group was Miss Martha Cornell. And when she told me years later that she could hardly wait until she was 16 years old and could be elected to the group. Soon she was the president, and with a few others, Miss Lena Shelley among them, they were the librarians for the library and gave many years of service in that way. And both of them continued their interest into the new library when it was built. By 1926, the 25-member Ladies Association and the town realized that things had changed and grown, and they realized that changes were needed, and the association was reorganized, much as we have it today. And also a need for a new building was recognized. The town had received in 1918 a sum of $15,000, a bequest from Miss Clara Sage, and which was to be used for a free public library if one had not already been built. This was waiting in the bank when in 33, Mr. Frederick Spencer made a gift to the town of this corner lot, and it was suitable for a library. So at that time, the town agreed that this was the time to build that new building, and they did so for less than $30,000, which included the furnishings. What was left over started the endowment fund, which was I guess still goes today somewhat. When I came to work, a month before the opening of this new building, my first task was to review the collection in the old building and get it ready for moving. Miss Cornell, Miss Shelley, and Mrs. Isabel Hubbard, who was the retiring librarian, were invaluable assistants. Both Miss Shelley and Miss Cornell continued their help to me in the new building. When she died, the Shoreline Times said Miss Nat Cornell and the Guilford Library are practically synonymous. She had given almost 50 years of service to the town. In the new library reorganization, committees were assigned, and with the space to do it, many fine exhibits and programs were put on. Books were chosen by a book committee of citizens. Miss Shelley helped out with a preschool story hour. Limited funds, of course, were a challenge. This popular title or that needed book for nonfiction, which should be purchased. For 6 years, the lower floor was used by the school system for the first kindergarten, and that went on until Lee opened in 1950. With an expanded service, business increased, more hours were needed, and part-time assistants were hired. Marjorie Benton Spaulding, Dorothea Bishop, and Miriam Burton, who later became full-time, were some of those who would be full-time. By 1960, crowded shelves caused reorganization, putting the main stack room downstairs in what is now the workroom. Jean Baldwin became the full-time assistant librarian, a happy occurrence for the library and for me. In 1970, again, we needed room. And after much study, a new building was proposed, but rejected by town meeting. To give us a little breathing space, at that time, the children's library was moved into the Lathrop House. That was in 1971. Finally, an addition for this building was voted and erected and opened in 1977. The children's library returned to their new location, and guess who was their librarian? Our Sandy Ruoff, who is celebrating her 30 years with us this month, and is planning for our new addition. The old library on Whitfield Street was given to the town, and they gave it to the Boy Scouts, and it served them until Hurricane Gloria came along and put a branch through the roof, and it had to be demolished. The first book sale that I saw on record was in 1955, and we were so happy to have earned some money. And I came to work the next day, and the money was gone. So they had another sale at Fair Day after that, and to try and replace some of that money. And the Friends started the Friends of the Library started in 1973, and they are still giving nice things and doing nice things to create and promote the library work. The board of directors, I've always was so proud of my board of directors. They were very helpful and encouraging about the things that went on during the years, and that was a great joy to have that type of information coordination with them. Well, I think that's enough for that, and then I can answer any questions that people might have about it.
How much did you spend a year on books in the beginning?
In the very beginning, we had this book committee of citizens who met once a month or so, and I looked it up. In 1 year, we bought about 100 books. And another year, I saw that the book fund was $161 for a year. Yeah, I figured they would buy too many books, and even with the prices they were then.
How about the McNaughton books that they used to get?
Well, when we had a little more money to use, there was the McNaughton books, which came. They were new fiction mostly. We could order a certain number to come every month, and they would be, and then we'd send back the one. They'd have them a certain length of time. We'd return them. That got
Better than buying them.
instead of buying them, yeah. But you had to have the money to initiate it. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question for you. When was it okay to wear slacks to work?
1970?
Oh, no.
I know you couldn't wear slacks to Yukon unless it was 32 or below 0 degrees if you were a female. When I went there in 1958. That was the law at Guilford, at University of Connecticut.
I think we had teachers at Calvin in the 60s.
Oh, well, you were very progressive. Penny, can we talk a little bit about the schools? And
Yeah.
I'd like to, because this could be lives in parallel, talk a little bit about the school system, because I know a little bit about what Edith went through, going through the Guilford school system, and then 30-some years later, what I went through, and it's totally different from today. Edith was totally different from me, but I know, Edith, you started up in Clabber Hill, going to school about 100 yards from where you live today. You want to just talk about your school career? And
When I remember starting school there, and at that time, I'm sure there were 8 grades. And there must have been about 2 people and 3 people in each grade.
Now, you have to explain, this was in the Clabber Hill